Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, December 14th, 2020. I thought it was the 17th for a second there. Today we're going to be talking about the Electoral College, which actually voted today. So if you haven't heard, starting at 8 a.m., states began reporting their electoral votes. Essentially, they met in their state capitals, or they met via Zoom, or they met in a disclosed location just because of the fact that there were threats for some of these states, and just out of a sense of caution for some of these electors. Essentially, all of them met together, and they cast their ballots for whichever person and vice presidential candidate on that ticket as well. There were 0 faithless electors this election. They cast their ballots for those respective winners in their states. And overall, it was the same exact result we're used to, 306 to 232. But there were some interesting things that actually occurred today. Number one, the GOP had some members of the statewide parties in Nevada and Pennsylvania vote alongside the Democratic Party, casting their own electoral college ballots. Now, these are null and void. They don't matter. They will never matter, and they will not impact the outcome of the election. They are just pretty much a formality. It's just for the GOP in those states to say, that's it. I mean, to be completely honest, these states were not won by the GOP. There is no evidence of fraud in any of these two states except for Pennsylvania having 2 cases of voter fraud, both of which were Republicans, ironically, based off what President Trump has been trying to push onto the American media and the American people. But overall, baseless claims about voter fraud, widespread voter fraud across the country, and that prompted some statewide GOPs to actually cast their own ballots for president and vice president, but they won't matter, don't matter whatsoever. They will not impact the outcome of the election. And number 2, we also just saw that Bill Barr, Attorney General of the United States, has just been pretty much fired. President Trump says that he's resigning right before the holiday season to spend time with family, but we all know that's not true. The electoral vote put Joe Biden over 270 around 525, and then at 534, Bill Barr supposedly announced that he was retiring. It seems very much to be a media stunt because Bill Barr wouldn't be this person that President Trump wanted to focus on election integrity, focus on supposed election fraud. So overall, this is something I think that Trump has been wanting to do for a while, and this would be the perfect opportunity for him. I think this is a very well-orchestrated plan to shift the media attention away from the Electoral College, but it doesn't make it any less legitimate that Joe Biden will in fact be the next president of the United States. And there was discussion originally about faithless electors, but let me talk to you about why that doesn't occur as I scroll through all of these states so you can see how each individual state voted. So essentially, faithless electors, if you don't know, what they are, it gives the power of the elector to pretty much vote for a different type of candidate, given that they do not trust how the public voted on their first ballot. So, for example, if you live in the state of Kansas and there's a Republican elector who believes that Joe Biden should be president and was put in place if Donald Trump was to win the state, technically they could vote for Joe Biden. But a recent Supreme Court ruling over the summer of this past year deemed that it was constitutional for laws to be in place that allowed states to prohibit electors from voting faithlessly. There were 7 faithless electors in 2016, 5 of which defected from Hillary Clinton, 2 of which defected from Donald Trump. So the final electoral vote totals in 2016 were not in fact 306 to 232, but rather 304 to 227. But that really didn't make a difference, and based off the states that Donald Trump won, he did technically, or was supposed to receive 306. But still, Joe Biden actually did receive 306. Donald Trump actually received 304. So I think that's something that people are going to try to use against President Trump, just in any type of future confrontation. But besides that, when we're talking about the idea of a faithless elector, the right wing was banking on the fact that there could be some Democrats that were upset with Vice President Biden. I'm not going to say every single elector here, chose Biden as their first choice. There were probably many of them that wanted another Democratic nominee. Joe Biden was getting 30% of the vote. He was winning by a plurality up until a moment when he was in the final 2, 3, 4 candidates. But other than that, I really don't think that there was ever the possibility that we would have any type of Biden/Democratic elector voting for Donald Trump or really voting for any other candidate. We actually saw some Democrats in 2016 vote for a Republican in an effort to convince other Republicans to do the same thing, to try to skew the Electoral College vote in favor of another Republican, deny Trump from 270, whatever it might be, just to prevent Donald Trump from getting to the White House. Hillary Clinton also saw the loss of 5 total electors. She lost them in Hawaii. Bernie Sanders actually received an electoral vote back in 2016, and then she lost 4 of them in Washington. So she actually received only 8 out of the 12 electoral votes in that state. So Donald Trump lost 2 from Texas. I believe 1 voted for John Kasich. The other voted for, I believe, Ron Paul or Rand Paul, one of them. But for those electors had voted against Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton on the presidential ticket, but this time it's not going to occur because the Supreme Court said that those laws were constitutional, which means that these people could not violate them, even if they wanted to. The elector system was in place to defy the popular vote in a certain state. If a state is deemed to vote for a candidate, that would be bad for America. And we've never actually seen this implemented because loyalists are always the ones appointed to the Electoral College vote. And up until recently, it had been done by statewide parties. It still is for in some cases, but also a lot of the times they've been making sure that they are actually loyalists, because in 2016, I think a lot of Democratic officials were upset that Hillary Clinton received 5 less electoral votes than the amount she should have won. So looking at this election, there was no real possibility of any type of faithless electors, and obviously this Electoral College vote solidified, puts all of that at rest. And also, this means that it doesn't matter how much Donald Trump wants to go to the courts, it's done. It's absolutely done. With the Supreme Court ruling against Texas and Donald Trump being 50-1 in the court, there is absolutely no way that I see him trying to, or really any Republican official, an attorney general, any type of elected official, non-elected official, whoever it might be, it doesn't matter. It's not going to go to the courts. It's especially not going to go back to the Supreme Court after they already shot down the Texas case, because there is no evidence of voter fraud. And because there is no evidence, there was nothing halting the Electoral College vote. And now that the Electoral College has voted, now it goes to Congress. And I know some people are going to be worried, Mike Pence isn't going to let Joe Biden win the election. Well, he doesn't technically necessarily need to be happy with the results. It is his duty to affirm the results. And honestly, Mike Pence is an opportunist. Many politicians are. I'm not saying that in a negative way. He is an opportunist. Many Republican and Democratic officials alike are absolutely opportunists. And I think that he's going to take this as an opportunity to pretty much end the election discussion. And he's not going to end it before Christmas. He's going to let this draw on. But I think Mike Pence has a future for himself in terms of how he wants to run. I think he wants to run for president in 2024. I think he is eyeing up a higher office than vice president, as Vice President Biden did, because there is a very real pipeline between vice president and president of the United States, or at least vice president to nominee for president of the United States. So Joe Biden did it. And I think that Mike Pence is going to want to do it as well. And I think that if he continues to accept these and say the election was not real, the election had voter fraud, that Joe Biden is not the legitimate president of the United States, or he wouldn't be the legitimate president and is not the legitimate president-elect, I think that's something that's really going to hurt his campaign once Republican officials start pushing away from that. Because after today, we've seen a number of senators now jump on to the acknowledgement of President-elect Biden. And that's expected. The Electoral College was the last stand. This vote was a countdown from November 3rd for Donald Trump to try to do something in order to prevent this from happening, whether that was going through the courts, really anything. And now he's trying to divert attention away from this Electoral College vote. Not even 10 minutes after Joe Biden's put over 270 electoral votes, Attorney General Bill Barr, quote unquote, resigns. He wasn't too popular amongst Trump. He was getting vilified by many members of the right wing. He wasn't too happy with this discussion of voter fraud. And now we see President Trump using this as an opportunity to direct media attention away from the Electoral College vote. But it doesn't matter, because now it's actually over. And I know I've been telling you guys, it's getting close to being over. We're finally done now that the Supreme Court has thrown it out. But now the electors have officially cast their ballots. There should be no doubt about the validity of the election results. There should be no doubt about any type of faithless elector, because every elector has voted and not one of them changed. They didn't change on the presidential ticket. They didn't change on the vice presidential ticket. And this is a very different picture from what we saw back in 2016. And, typically we don't have many faithless electors. We don't usually see them. Sometimes there are issues, but in 2016, it was a very big deal because both candidates were viewed very negatively. This time, Joe Biden was actually liked by the American people. Donald Trump still remained in the negative. But Donald Trump still had a pretty good showing for someone who was expected to lose by an even larger margin. So overall, Joe Biden wins 306 electoral votes. Donald Trump receives 232. We all knew that wasn't going to change, but there were many members in the media that were encouraging discussion about outside options. I mean, I always talked about how Trump was going to try to go to the courts. We actually saw state Supreme Courts actually throwing down Trump's cases 4-3. So had the Democratic Party or liberal justices had not been in the majority in some of those states, We could have had that as an opportunity, but we really shouldn't have been discussing faithless electors. It was improbable, and the fact that we even saw segments about it where they were looking at potential faithless electors, it really didn't make sense. They were looking at history and the idea that 40 electors could switch over to from Biden to Trump. Even in 2016, not a single faithless elector out of the 7 voted for the opposition party nominee. So that wasn't really what the faithless electors were saying in 2016. They were just unhappy with their party's nominee, but they hated the other one even more. So this election, we didn't actually see that whole lesser of two evils idea really rise up, maybe during the Democratic primary, but other than that, Joe Biden remained relatively popular amongst the American people. Hillary Clinton did not. And now the Electoral College has voted, and these electors do like. They do like Joe Biden and Donald Trump for their respective parties. So nothing changed. Back to exactly what we expected, but now it's absolutely done. Certification, thing of the past. Court cases, litigation, thing of the past. President Trump is going to try to find a way. I can guarantee it. He's not going to concede the election. He's passing Al Gore at this rate. And I really do think that we've seen a bunch of members from the right wing talk about how it's not over till January 20th. And technically, they are right that Joe Biden will not be president till January 20th, but not acknowledging it is very dangerous to the American public, very dangerous to the future validity of our elections, because there is no evidence of voter fraud, and perpetuating this notion that this election was somehow rigged with no evidence is something that is going to be a part of the playbook for future politicians. Maybe not Donald Trump, but other politicians. And as we continue to fight inwards, fight in our country about the legitimacy of our election results, it only hurts America. When there's no proof, no evidence, and an entire force that has a very significant base, I think at some point bipartisanship needs to actually occur to a point where senators, representatives can actually come together, Democrats and Republicans, and agree on the election results. And a lot of Republicans today, following the Electoral College vote, have all agreed that Joe Biden is going to be the next president of the United States. They may be a month late, but it's better late than never. And I think it's going to be very important looking forward to see, who actually accepted the results of the election early versus waiting on, because that could very well tell us which type of Republican candidate can appeal to a certain base. Because I can guarantee it, for the next 4 years, Joe Biden will not be an accepted president by a very significant portion of the American people. Tens of millions of people. I can guarantee that. But that's sort of the same thing that happened with Donald Trump. The idea of Russian collusion, which actually I would say was something that had, I'm probably going to get vilified for saying this, but probably had more evidence than this voter fraud situation. I think that's factual if you actually do research into it, because there is nothing showing that there was any type of voter fraud against really Donald Trump, any mass voter fraud at least. Choosing 1-2 singular cases is not something I like to do, which is exactly why I said ironically in the beginning of the video when we talked about Pennsylvania, the only voter fraud there were 2 Republicans. Neither of them voted for Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but still something that the Republican Party was investigating, only found members of their own party partaking in it. But looking at the future of elections, I just hope that we can return to a point where we trust the American system. And I don't think that it's favorable to really anyone, regardless of your political party, to put distrust in the American election system, because that will only hurt us. And a lot of us do recognize that. Everyone have every single political ideology, which is exactly why a number of Republicans are now jumping on to President-elect Biden. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my post-2020 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.